Everybody, I've got Bishoy. Bishoy is crushing it in the short-term rental arbitrage business. He just cracked three more doors. He's up to eight now. He's in, where is it? Nashville, your latest properties are?
Nashville, those are the three that we're getting next week, actually,
Oh,
starting there,
next week.
and San Antonio mainly for our other ones.
And San Antonio, the other ones. Two very good markets, two fantastic states. That's sort of the consensus. We're seeing a lot of stuff happening in South Texas,
Hmm.
Tennessee, South Florida. Not so much in the Northeast, although we're getting deals up there. Seattle and Portland,
Hmm.
those are tougher places. But most of the stuff that we're seeing is in places that you're going in. So anyway, share with me, share with the folks here, share this with your experience in the program, or if you just want to talk about your properties. What I really like to focus on is how you're able to acquire properties. Like, what's your process for market research? What tools do you use? And then ultimately, how you're able to, what you say to a landlord, what tools you use to approach them. I kind of know what my approach is. I use hot pads, but I don't know if you're still doing it that method and what other method you're using. But if you could just share with the audience here your experience.
So the program, very, very great program. So everything that you've taught us, I've used to get a land our actual first deal, which actually started out with 3 units in that one building in San Antonio.
Right.
So we did the whole, we used your script to try and get to land conversations with the actual, we ended up having a conversation with the property owner themselves, like through their agency, which was great.
Yeah.
Once we got kind of past all those AI type of tools that they usually have, like even with hot pads, once you message enough where they finally get someone on the line because they're interested or this or that, that's where you get the deal done. It's once you have once you get onto the phone and have that conversation and relay that you know what you're doing, they're a lot more comfortable with you and they're willing to give you a shot. I came from that, like literally no credit history in the US, brand new business, had to sell all that to them, and they were in a position to be okay. They had vacancies, we were solving their issue, and we were able to secure the deal that way.
Yeah, that's, by the way, you brought up a great point that if when I first started, my first few deals were with the owners instead of a management company, because the owners may say, "Oh no, I'm adamantly opposed to this business model," and one thing can change. They could
Yeah.
change their you're now providing value. They like you. They see that you're professional, and then things can change on a dime like that. And the other big thing you brought up was your approach. So I actually advise people that, look, you're going to get some sort of auto response and or artificial intelligence chatbot that's sort of becoming a gatekeeper. And so my answer to that is typically call them, but I like that you just said nope. I pounded them with more messages. Ultimately, they were able to get back to me. That's actually a new one. I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm actually going to start using that.
It's just you got to get past those layers, and then eventually it gets to the people that are necessary to deal with it, where it's going to end up putting a human being actually behind it. So,
Yeah.
and you'll quickly see that because when you're messaging a whole lot of buildings, you're getting the same structured email from all of these platforms. They're all using the same platform with all these buildings. And so you'll know right away that it's the same bot that's sending you those
Yeah.
automated messages. But eventually, once you're saying keywords, it'll get to the right people afterwards.
Ah, very interesting. There were a few of the chatbots must be services for some big companies because I noticed one of the names, I think it was I forgot the name now, but one of the names I recognized from another building entirely. And after a couple of iterations of the same message, it was answering the same way. I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is a chatbot, and it had that same name. So
Mhm.
I was looking at for that. That's great. So one of the foundations of my entire process, which is managing time, so you're not spending all the time doing tours, filling out applications, or even getting on the phone call with them first. You ultimately you're going to have to do all that stuff, but in the beginning, because most buildings say no, they'll say no, we don't allow corporate leases, and then later on, they'll, like, even if they allow corporate leases, they may not allow our version of that, short-term rentals and platforms and all that. So if you're, making phone calls, doing physical tours and all that stuff, it's very time consuming and your output will be diminished. And so this is a numbers game, like a lot of businesses, like a lot of real estate businesses, all about numbers. And so I really, really like your point about even with a chat bot, you're going forward with messaging, you can come back later and then reply to it. And that really keeps it simple up front, ultimately trying to generate warm leads. That's
Yeah,
great.
so it's basically like I don't want the students to worry, like you're gonna get rejected. Like it's normal. That's the normal process. But I mean, you just need the first deal. So at the end of the day, don't let that bring you down. Like you gotta keep hammering it. I'm pretty sure I managed to send to around about 80 or 90 different buildings before we got to the right guy at the right time. But again, that was my greatest deal in general. We now we're at 5 units with them. We did a fantastic year in general. So I
Great deal.
mean, yeah. And then the other caveat I would, those who do say yes and you get them on the phone and you're close to closing out a deal, go in person. I can't stress that enough. Like, make sure you're there to close the deal in person. It adds 10 times the layer in terms of your professionalism and that you're serious and you're not just some guy who's just messaging. Also,
Yeah.
get there in person, especially to close the deal. That's my number one thing to close.
Great
Yeah.
point. That's a great point. And you know, I'm always emphasizing try to do as much as you can online, but there is a factor in business, bar none, that doing a business in person
Yeah.
is the way to go, especially when you're dealing with the owner themselves. Because once they like you, leaving your units in show condition, paying your rent on time, and providing value to them in the form of occupancy, you can scale like mad with them. Let me ask you a question. Does that particular, the first building, do they own more than one building?
They own about 6 others across the US.
That's so with that, and I didn't know this in the very, very beginning. Even mom and pop operations typically will own way more than one, and most of those people are self-made, so they don't mind working. They could have probably long ago retired and been on a beach somewhere, and a lot of them are in the thick of it all. Also, did they give you've developed a relationship with them? Were they instrumental in helping you acquire or getting a reference of your other deals in Tennessee?
So yes and no, because we ended up finding this deal with talking to certain, like we were on Facebook groups. That's the other thing. I join Facebook groups for all your cities that you're in.
Right.
Join
Yeah.
Airbnb ones that in general for people who are trying to, like, share ideas, share problems that they are facing that the rest of the community are helping with. I would
Right.
get onto those, making sure, and then there were new buildings that got propped up on this real estate page on our Facebook that was a brand new building looking to, get some tenants in. And
Right.
so we actually approached them there, and then they were interested, and then we were able to kind of, because they had a lot of units that were still available, so we were kind of helping them with their vacancies that way.
That's great.
Yeah.
How did you furnish your first batch, if you can remind me, your first 5 units?
Yeah. So again, we did exactly what you told us and instructed us to find a storage unit that was willing to accept delivery. That was a challenge because of the amount of stuff we had to deliver.
Yeah, they're a little bit
Um,
expensive too.
so even though we had like storage units that were near the unit, we had to find one that was maybe about 25 minutes away
Oh,
that was willing to accept all of the deliveries the way they were accepting.
right.
Some, like, if stuff showed up at the actual front office, they weren't going to touch it. So some people were like that, so we didn't want to deal with them. But we managed to find, and similar in Nashville, we did find the same thing with someone about 20 minutes away, and he's done it before with somebody else, so he understands all the nuances behind it. But that's kind of number one thing: find that storage unit that's willing to accept deliveries and explain to them exactly what you're doing, because you need to be upfront about it, and so they understand what they're in for. And if they're okay
because
with it, yeah.
because they're gonna be sent to all kinds of detergents and liquids and all kinds of stuff they otherwise might not like, and we had to negotiate with ours. Great point, by the way, Bishoy, because my operations guy had told me, he says, "Ooh, we're getting a little pushback. I don't think they realize the gravity of how much stuff is going to be sent them." Now, the alternative for most hosts, and this was just something, it was just something we came up with, that most people, the standard operating procedure, if you will, is to hire a runner, and you have some sort of delivery system, and it has to go somewhere. So if you're ordering your things online, which is largely where everything comes from, you need a place for it to be housed. And if you have a bunch of units in one market, you can't send those to the building. And I know you negotiated your first door, a small unit in the building, a 5 by 10, and that's pretty much what we've done in the past, and it's very convenient. What you can't do, though, logistically, is just have everything sent to the building, because the building itself will have a problem. So you need some sort of central warehouse. Great point. That is a lot of people ask me for that, because of course we're self-managing. We're not farming this out to a property manager, and you're not personally doing all the work. And so the middle ground has created an infrastructure and a system, and that storage unit is an important part of that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And then, yeah, once we have everything in place, once we're ready to do the move out, where we end up going to furnish the place, place, then we hire a couple of guys to actually move everything out of those storage and now into the actual unit, and then we go ahead and start hammering everything out.
Awesome, awesome. I
Just
really, I really, really like that, all of that information. I like to keep these, doing a series of these with the various people in our program that are just crushing it. Are top of mind, especially because you just told me the other day you got some new deals. I'm so
so,
happy to take your busy time, and I know you're setting up this week. So I
uh,
greatly appreciate you taking the time out and to share some insight with the people in our program and others
of
outside
course.
in our community. If anybody's interested in joining Rental Arbitrage with Richie Matthews Facebook community, it's just another Facebook group online, and we have a very vibrant group of people there. We're just sharing tidbits like this. That's where this is going to get posted. And so be sure, have a fantastic, busy weekend. And
Yeah,
obviously,
man.
like always, message me if you need anything.
Thank you so much. You too. And just guys, take action. That's all I can end off with. Don't
I
sit
love that.
around.
I love
Action.
that. So by the way, I ask people, and I ask myself this, and I said this to myself in late 2019. I said, am I going to go into rental arbitrage? And my answer to that is, I believe I will. I believe I looked into this long enough. Okay, if I am going to do that, what am I waiting for? Because I was always waiting for, well, at the time I was looking for partners. I had a partner on board and they backed out. I was looking for X amount of funding. Had no idea what to expect, right? And so I was looking at certain and what I decided is I got a yes. I had
Mhm.
a building. It wasn't ideal. I didn't think it was ideal at the time. It's one of our best performers. I got a yes, and I decided, you know what? I don't even know. Let's sign that thing and figure it out. Now, at the time, I didn't really have a system. I moved in for a few days and set it up, and it all worked out. But great point, Bisho. I think that goes in general in life. Obviously, you can move things too quickly. But if you think you're going to do this, you're like, yes, I've heard a lot about this, but I'm going to do that. The best time is to act. There's a bunch of free information. You can go to Richie Matthews on YouTube and take my free mini course. And you can go on there and go to our Facebook group and then put this together yourself. You can do it yourself. So I like that point, Bisho. Have a great weekend
Thanks, man. You too.
and holler if you need anything.
Will do. Thanks, man.
All right, take care.